Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome to part 1 of What If Deku Was an Artificial Human. All for one, preparing Noumu decides to deviate from his normal methods to try and make a new type of Noumu. Sentient Noumus, Noumus that could think for themselves. However, a young Shigaraki expresses want for a sibling. So he decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. However, to do this, he required one to be younger than Tomura and to have no quirk. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. After watching this video, don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Darkness, total darkness covered everything but a single light. A computer screen. The screen changed, and so did the light to either brighten the room or make it darker. Clicks could be heard as fingers dashed over a keyboard and pressing each letter as the screen continued to change. The figure at the computer had hair framing their face before turning their head to a smaller sleeping figure. He turned back to the computer as he searched and searched, looking for something. This, the masculine voice stated deeply, is all for your sake. He didn't stay too long on one page before moving on to the next. Too old, too big, too beat up, dead, lost limbs. Screen after screen, page after page. He searched and searched. There were too many, and the fact it lacked a more defined search feature made it all the more painstaking long. He didn't even spend more than a second on the pages. Pages of people of various ages, genders, and more importantly quirks. A child's words rang through his head as he searched. "Can I have a little brother?" An innocent voice resounded in his mind. Hearing it the first time, he was quite surprised. This was the first time he showed any signs of want. More specifically, want for another. He decided to comply with the wishes of the child. After all, this was all for his sake. He wanted a younger brother. The first thing he wanted was another person. He'll grant that wish. His searching, however, was now limited, but still, he took all the others into consideration. They might prove to be useful, especially with what his current work. So he decided to add the 2 together. 2 birds with 1 stone. The screen stopped. This time, he stayed on the page. It was newly updated to boot. Younger than him, quirk status, acceptable. He rose from his chair as the monitor cut to black. Near silent footsteps walked past the sleeping figure and left through the door. He continued walking by tubes filled to the brim of green liquid, and then, once he stepped foot outside, he vanished. Rain fell heavily as a young child, no older than 4, curled up in his bed with sheets covering his body. A tuft of black hair with green highlights, enough to label his as having green hair, stuck out before diving deeper within the sheets. Sheets that were soon stained with tears, as small noises might have been heard if one was close enough. The crying child could hear clearly through the door that was cracked open just enough for him to hear. "Quirkless?" his father asked. He could only picture his mother nodding with tears. He heard nothing else. He could only imagine. It had been about a week since his diagnostic about his quirk status. Quirkless, a rare phenomenon in today's society, which pretty much meant you were worthless. Maybe back in the day when quirks were first coming out, maybe quirkless status would have been seen in good light. But now, it was all about quirks. Even though there were laws about using quirks in public, people still used them. There were 2 people who did so. They were heroes and their polar opposite, villains. Villains, those who would use their quirks to harm others and commit crimes, and widely regarded as the scum of society. Yet oddly enough, still held higher than those without quirks. Heroes, unlike villains, were those who used their quirks to help the innocent from not only villains, but natural disasters and other threats that could cause harm. However, in order to be a hero, you must have a quirk. It was clear as day to what society has degraded to. Quirks, superpowers, to kill or to protect. If you didn't have a quirk, you were practically shunned. His head shifted so that a single eye could see out of the blankets. His parents had already moved. Their conversation kept going despite him not being able to hear them. He could only imagine what they were talking about. Probably about him being worthless. The mind of a child was a fragile one that needed to be taken with care. If you weren't careful with a child's mind, then who knows what may happen to the child's state of mind. A child was innocent to the world. They were heavily susceptible to the words of others around them. They were impressionable, and to the wrong people, that was clearly a bad thing. Lightning hit the ground outside of the apartment complex. He saw the flash of light, and on the wall, he could have sworn he saw a figure. A second, that all it took. A second to turn his life from bad to worse. First finding out that he was quirkless, never being able to be a hero. Then, the bullying due to his quirkless nature, those who once treated him as human stopped when his quirkless status was revealed. Their teacher didn't seem to care in the slightest. And finally, the day his father finally got back from a business trip. He lost both his parents, home, and useless possessions. He was alone. The storm, was it a storm or a villain? Whatever happened, he lost everything. He heard footsteps as he leaned against a piece of broken rubble. He couldn't move. It was a miracle he survived. He tried looking for his parents, only to find them, buried under heavy debris, without any intention of moving ever again. Where were the heroes? Weren't they supposed to help in these situations? This was clearly a disaster. He heard footsteps approaching him as he looked up. He didn't know how long it'd been, but the rain kept pouring regardless. It was heavier. The man's crisp black suit was short hair from what he could tell, and then he spoke. "Nobody came to save you, huh?" he asked as he approached the child. "It must have hurt, Izuku Midoriya. The heroes will, or before long the heroes will." Everyone said things like that, but they all ignored you, didn't they? Even the heroes themselves. How exactly did the world end up like this? Who made it this way? He held out his hand invitingly. "It's okay now, don't worry, I'm here." And then, little Izuku held out his hand as the world went black. He gazed up at the ceiling above him. He had awoken not that long ago, but the memories barraged his mind like at guns. "I see you're awake," his savior said. "We have much to talk about, young Midoriya." He lifeless gazed at the man before springing up. "Where's my mom? Where's my dad?" he asked. "Are they okay?" "You know the answer to that yourself, young Midoriya," he said. "No matter how much you want to deny it, your parents passed away last night." Tears threatened to fall, and fall they did. The man had moved to the side as he threw his arm around the child. "I know what it's like to lose people close to you," he brought up. "But that is for another time. Do you wish to learn how your parents' lives came to an end? Was it a villain?" he asked. "No," he said. "Not just a villain, but a hero." The child stared with wide eyes, unable to form words. A hero was fighting a villain, and he took the chance to take the villain out by sacrificing the lives of not only you but your parents. He patted the child as he continued. "A hero took your parents' lives away. A hero did this." The child could only cry as the man stood. "I will be back shortly, with an offer." He had been locked away for a day as the man returned. "Midoriya?" he asked as he entered. The child's eyes were lifeless, devoid of anything. "Remember my offer from yesterday?" The child nodded as he wore clean new clothes, a recently emptied bowl set to the side. In but 2 days, this man treated him more kindly than his preschool teachers and classmates did in a week after hearing that he was quirkless. "Before I offer, there is something I need to tell you." "What's that?" "You are labeled dead to the world." "Huh?" The child blinked. He couldn't believe his ears. "I apologize, but I'm alive." "You are," the man confirmed. "But Izuku Midoriya is dead." The child looked down as he continued. "However, Izuku Shigaraki is still alive." Izuku's head snapped back up, words failing to come out of his mouth, and if they did, he could have been called a rap god. "I have a child not that older than you, a few years in age," he started. "His name is Tomura Shigaraki." Are you?" "Yes, Midoriya, no Izuku. I am offering you a new home and family." He held out his hand again. "And a chance to make this world right again. So, would you join this family of outcasts as the younger brother to Tomura?" He expected anything from the child, more of an immediate yes. Not tears. "Why, are you so nice to me?" he asked with tears pouring down his face. "So nice when others were not." "Because I understand," he said. "You don't need a reason to be kind to others. So, would you join us?" "Yes, Mr. Shigaraki." He placed his small fragile hand into the bigger one. "Oh, my name isn't Shigaraki." "Then what do I call you?" "Call me Sensei." Sensei was watching the events unfold. Shigaraki and Midoriya got along swimmingly. He could tell from both kids that they both hated heroes, at how helpless they could be, at how they put their lives in risk. "Sensei, who is he?" young Shigaraki asked, his messy gray hair getting in the way of his red eyes. Izuku could see the small scar on the left side of his lip. This was Izuku Midoriya, but now he is Izuku Shigaraki. "Shigaraki?" the other young child asked, tilting his head. "Was I mistaken? I thought you wanted a younger brother?" With those words, Shigaraki's eyes lightened up. "Brother?" He could hear the tone Tomura's voice was carrying. All he did was nod at the one-worded question. "Yes, brother," he repeated. "I hope you'll get along. He's been through some trouble with heroes." He started walking away, back to his study. "Now, I will let you to get along." With that, Tomura and Izuku had taken a liking to each other. Shigaraki, the one who was ignored by heroes when he needed them most, in Midoriya, the one whose life was destroyed by selfish heroes. And then, young Izuku brought up the fact he was quirkless, and how that meant worthless in today's society. That was when he saw the look in Tomura's eyes. The eyes of not only rage at society and heroes, but also protectiveness. This was new, but it did fuel young Tomura with the desire to topple society. And that was all that matters. Once again, clicking could be heard as Sensei typed at his computer, albeit slower than before. Honestly, he was searching for people for his work. He was looking for someone specific, so he decided to kill two birds with one stone. He stood as he heard crying while walking past the previous tubes filled with green liquid, and more. Forms, well, more like deforms. He continued past till he reached the crying of the child. Kneeling down, he placed a hand on the child who was brought to the land of destruction, death, and evil known as reality. Don't worry. He comforted the child. I am here. Good morning, Izuku. Sensei greeted the green-haired child as he placed down a book about quirks. This book is very interesting if you want to read it. Sorry for worrying you. That's not a problem, Izuku. Sensei stood as he calmly approached the child. But I do have an offer for you. Another? He asked as he saw Sensei nod. This is much different, however. What is it? He asked with childlike curiosity. Tell me, you're quirkless, are you not? Izuku looked down at the floorboards. Yes, he croaked out softly. You know, I can fix that, he said as the child looked up. I can give you a quirk. The child's eyes couldn't grow any larger. You can? Sensei nodded. But let me tell you something first, he said as the child took in every word. You need to train and get stronger before I give you a quirk. Izuku nodded as he continued. Secondly, we are outcasts, thrown to the side of society and treated as villains. I'm sure you know what that means. I can never be a hero, Izuku said as he remembered his parents' death at the hands of a hero. A selfish hero who was willingly to use innocent lives. If heroes are like that, then I never want to be a hero. Izuku felt Sensei's hand patting his head. Yes, to society you being quirkless is pretty much equivalent to worthless, Sensei said. But you have the most potential. Huh, all quirkless people have to work 10 times harder. And even then, some of the strongest-willed people were quirkless. Really? He asked with a bit too much hope. Sensei nodded again. Now tell me, Izuku, what's your opinion on All Might? He asked the child. I'm unsure now. I used to think he was a great hero, but you still have doubts? That's understandable. He smiled at the child. However, I will tell you he is not all he seems to show himself as. The number one hero, the symbol of peace, All Might, he would even tell you that you being quirkless is worthless. Unfit to be a hero without a quirk. Izuku looked down to the floor once more. All Might too, despite society looking down at you. I believe in you, Izuku, Sensei said as he waved his hand. I believe in your potential, not as a hero, but as a fellow outcast that would label us a villain at the smallest word of complaint. And that's when Izuku unleashed the tears he didn't know how long he was holding back. He watched as he gave Izuku some papers on what to do. Shigaraki took the time to help his new younger brother. However, he needed someone to watch them. I'll make sure they'll stay safe, a male voice said. He was entirely made up of mist and wore an elegant suit with a tie and 5 metal plates that go from around his collarbone to just below his eyes. Thank you, Kirojiri, he said before turning back to his work. His finger tapped patiently on the desk as he saw another article of All Might appear on the corner of a most trending topic. He immediately left the site. He had found what he needed already, but it didn't hurt to look for more individuals. Quirkless, those without quirks. That's what he was originally looking for. But then, Shigaraki wanted a younger brother, so he decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But it limited his search. That was when he found him. He turned with the chair following as he stopped to look at the green tubes filled with bodies. All of them became mindless dolls. But that was simple. They all originally had quirks. And once a quirk was introduced to an existing quirk they already had, well, that happened as a result to them. Loss of their minds, loss of their personalities. No longer able to think for themselves, they could only take orders. However, back in the day, he could remember there being more successful attempts, back when quirkless ruled over those with quirks. But there was one who was a success despite having a quirk, his younger brother. He pushed those thoughts out of his head as he looked back to the creature in the tube. They were no longer human, but he had a theory. Those born without quirks, since they didn't have a quirk in their body, were a clean state. But that was just a theory. He needed someone to stand at Shigaraki's side. Someone for Shigaraki to fight for, and that person was Izuku. He will have to take it slow and careful. He didn't want to ruin young Izuku, plus if it failed, Shigaraki could still protect him and give him a striving goal. But for him, he wanted Izuku to succeed. Kurogiri was polite and well-mannered. That was what Izuku learned as he went through with Sensei's requests. He had learned from Tomura that he went through a similar plan, slightly different, but mostly the same. At first, it was hard, extremely so for a 4-year-old, but that didn't stop him. He kept pushing. He kept at it. Sensei believed in him. Shigaraki accepted him. Kurogiri, who he only met today, took care of him, made sure he ate right and stayed clean, and when he harmed himself, he patched him up. He didn't want to disappoint them. They took him in. They gave him a chance. Even his own parents thought he was worthless. His mother apologized for him not having a quirk. She was looking down on him. His father heard that he was quirkless. He was disappointed. He held them back. He held them both back from their dreams. Yet, despite feeling sad for him being the cause, he was filled with rage and happiness, like they got what they deserved. The biggest emotion he felt was confusion. Should he be sad? Or should be angry at them? Shigaraki told him to be angry at them as they saw him the same as society did. Kurogiri told him that was something he needed to figure out on his own. Did his parents really held the same views as the sheep of Japan? Or did they love him till the end? Sensei told him everything is alright now. He was safe, and so he dived back head first into the training regime for a 4-year-old that Sensei gave him. He will succeed, no matter what. He's doing well, Kurogiri said as he cleaned an empty glass, despite none being used. Yeah, Shigaraki said with a worried glance. But he's working himself too hard. It had been a year since he started and was taken in by Sensei and became Izuku Shigaraki. He doesn't want to be a burden to you after all. Kurogiri placed the empty glass down and got another to clean. You are his older brother, his idol. He just wants to make you proud. I know. Right now, Izuku wasn't doing any physical training. Right now he was reading, absorbing knowledge. There was a reason why villains were powerful if their quirks didn't give them an advantage in combat. They relied on their smarts. Izuku was currently reading a book about quirks. The same one Sensei offered a year ago. He learned about emitter, transformation and mutant-typed quirks. Or one might call Logia, Paramecia and Zoan. Where did that come from? Regardless, he learned about the thing he desired since he was diagnosed as quirkless. All because he happened to be born with 2 joints on his goddamn pinky toe. Reality was not fair. Men were not born equal. However, that didn't mean that he had to be fair or use fair methods. Sensei watched through the monitor of Izuku's progress. He was surpassing his expectations. Then again, those without quirks worked a lot harder to achieve their goals. He might have to grant Izuku the quirk sooner than he expected, but he still had a long way to go. 3 graves, that's all there was. 3 single graves. A family of 3, or what used to be. A man wearing a closed coat complete with a hat took in the graves. He had a stocky frame, dark hair, and squarish features. This was Naomasa Tsukachi, a police detective. He was sent to the scene of the destroyed apartment complex, but nothing remained. He returned to the crime scene. It was highly discussed as either a villain attack or a force of nature during the late night storm. Tsukachi, however, knew more. This wasn't just a storm, this was an attack. The same day his best friend Toshinori Yagi came to visit was the same night that travesty struck. Was it a coincidence? Who knows? But Tsukachi knew one thing. This case was a cold one. There was no evidence, only bodies. He took off his hat and offered to pray. It had been a year since the case. Sure, the building was repaired now, but there was one thing he caught in the murmurs. Talk of quirkless. The memory burned. He knew the case wasn't a force of nature. He knew someone attacked. There hadn't been any type of pinpoint destructive natural weather disasters like this one. It had to be an attack. He gritted his teeth as Toshi took it upon himself a bit too hard. He was the first hero to arrive on the scene after all. Talk of the parents' deaths was shocking to those who heard. But once they heard of the quirkless child, interest seemed to vanish instantly. Being quirkless is equivalent to being worthless. He didn't know why those thoughts appeared in his mind. Oh wait, his friend used to be quirkless. Maybe he projected his best friend onto the quirkless child. Maybe hearing that he was quirkless activated some worry for the child of memories of his best friend. He muttered an apology. This case came to a close. 6 years old. He was 6 now. He usually trained with Kurogiri as Sensei tended to Tomura about grooming. He thought his older brother's hair was fine. Kurogiri chuckled at that one. Now Izuku, the mist man said in a voice that he could only label as a teacher. If your enemy had an invisibility quirk, what is the best course of action? I'll use my other senses. If I can't see them, I'll listen and smell for them and their footsteps as well, he said. But would the quirk be a transformation or a mutation? Kurogiri paused for a brief moment. Transformation? How do you deal with it? Well, I'll use my sense of smell and hearing to find out where they are and follow any footprints. But since they are a transformation, I'll wait to see if the transformation can drop. If not, I'll perform a sneak attack. If it does drop, then I'll still go for the sneak attack if I can. Now, the mutant type 1. He said as the child almost repeated himself. I will do nearly the same, but I'll also look for signs of them having anything on their body. Add quirks to the mix. If I have any quirks that enhance my smell and hearing, I will use them for location purposes. The 6-year-old started. However, I will also use any quirk that allows me to see them like X-ray vision or infrared. Kurogiri's mist hand extended as it patted him on the head. Good job, he praised. Most people wouldn't bring in X-ray vision. Why did you choose that one? To see their bones, he answered. The outside may be invisible, but their insides aren't. Shall we move on to the next scenario? Izuku gladly nodded. Sensei and Kurogiri's teaching methods were a lot different from those of schools. They not only taught them what they needed to learn, but also more practical teachings of quirks, scenarios, and much more. Even combat, for example, quirk use too if you had one. Sensei didn't believe in teaching him and Tomura the same things that schools would. Sensei's methods were much more enjoyable, and he probably learned more than most kids going to school. Then again, he did work 10 times harder. You were born with a fire quirk. Kurogiri started. However, you are up against users of water quirk users. How can you turn this into your favor? Izuku seemed to be in thought for about a minute. May I ask where the battleground is, Kurogiri? You are fighting on rocky landscapes. I'll increase the heat of my flames and fire at the ground. At the ground? He asked the young child. Yes, that way the ground can also heat up, getting hotter. Ah, I see. That way it makes the water users immobile. But you too, that's right. Their water can take out my fire, but they also have to take care of whatever I set alight. Izuku started. Then when they try to cool the ground, steam appears. They said at once. Izuku nodded. Yep, depending on other battlefields, I'll light the area around me on fire. How would you combat them head on? I'll increase my fire to make steam once it connects with their water quirks. Or I'll increase my fire till the water reaches a boiling point. Turns out you have a second quirk that acts similar to your fire. However, it's not the ability to use electricity or ice. Solve it. I'll fight water with water, he said. I'll use my fire and water quirk together to create steam that I'll just as a smoke screen, but when attacking I'll boil my water to scald them. And if you don't have a water quirk, I'll use a wind quirk to blow back the waves of water while also adding it on to my flames to make my fire attacks faster and more powerful. Good job yet again, Izuku. Izuku beamed at the praise. Izuku. The deep voice of Sensei called out. Yes, Sensei? He asked, glancing to the green tubes on the wall. It's time. Really? He asked as his eyes widened. The man nodded. Yes, you have impressed me, and Kurogiri says that you excel at his studies. He nodded. It is time to bestow you a quirk. What quirk will I be getting? He asked nervously. Why, the quirk of your parents, young Izuku, he said as the child's jaw dropped. My parents' quirks? I know you're confused and it may not be much to start. But the ability to breathe fire and the ability to attract small objects are a lot more useful than you think, Sensei said sagely. Will you accept? I accept. Then we shall prepare immediately. Sensei? Shigaraki asked. Where's Izuku? He's getting a quirk, Tomura, Sensei replied. He is just getting ready. He is? Shigaraki asked with worry in his eyes. Don't you want him to join you in your quest? The older man asked. I promise no harm will befall upon Izuku. Besides, your goal is to topple the symbol of peace, is it not? It is. You're worried he'll become like the others? Shigaraki nodded. Don't fret. Sensei ruffled the gray hair of the child. Believe in your little brother. He'll pull through this. Sensei left Tomura where he stood as he patiently waited for both Sensei and Izuku. How do you feel, Izuku? Asked Sensei as he came out of the green tubes. Why did I need to go in there? He asked. It's just a precaution, to strengthen your body. He looked at his hands followed by the rest of his body. Does that mean I have a quirk now? No. It took Izuku a second for that to register. I strengthened your body, Izuku, Sensei said as he flexed his fingers. Augmented, if you will. I have yet to bestow you the quirks, but I thought the body training. It was needed, yes, and you still need to do that. I just gave it a boost, as a reward for doing so well past Kurogiri's expectations. Think of it as a bonus. Thank you, Sensei. He bowed his head, causing Sensei to chuckle. No need for formalities, Izuku. He gestured Izuku to a seat. However, augment boosts like that makes you artificial. Artificial? Yes, you're beyond human now, Sensei said. You are an artificial human, Izuku, but I still need to follow the training regime? Izuku got a nod in return. Sensei beckoned him closer, holding out his hand. I shall give you the quirks of your parents now, he said, placing his hand on Izuku's head. You might find yourself falling asleep, however. Then, young Izuku felt it. He felt it. It coursed through his body. However, when it was over, it happened again. It was an odd feeling. Odd, but probably something he would get used to in the future. That's if Sensei would provide more quirks for him. Izuku? He heard Sensei call his name. Izuku? Yes, Sensei? He responded as Sensei's face looked down at him. Did it work? Work? I think it went perfectly. Just as I calculated, he said as had already removed his hand. Interesting, very interesting. It seems he accepted the quirks much more easily than others due to being quirkless, he thought as he returned to his desk. It could also be from sheer willpower and want for a quirk that the quirks were accepted. He truly is a clean slate for quirks to be added, and no sign of being a mindless doll either. The perfect artificial creation. A Sentient Noumu. How do I test for my quirks? He asked him. Do not fret, I got that covered, he said before sending him a proud smile. A proud smile. I have to say, I'm proud of you. Izuku smiled, not bothering to hide it. Days passed as Izuku learned to use his quirks, the quirks of his parents, dead parents. It went along smoothly and could be controlled quite easily. Fire breath was quite easy to understand. He could breathe fire from his mouth, kind of like a dragon. That quirk belonged to his father. Attraction of small objects was his mother's quirk. It allowed him to attract small objects or tools towards his body. When Sensei said despite what they could do they were still useful, he was right. They had plenty of uses. He'll never have to get up to get the remote again. Or do sneak attacks with it too. Just imagine what scattered knives could do. Izuku kept at it, practicing as he recalled Sensei's words. You took to those quirks like a fish to water. Kept it up and I might give you another quirk. There was no time to rest. Let's go, Aizu, Tomura said as he led Izuku outside. Where are we going? He asked his older brother. Out, he said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Out where? Shopping, mostly. He followed his brother and did not recognize much of the city, seeing as he usually stayed where Tomura and Kurogiri was. With Sensei too, and the number one hero, All Might has saved the day yet again, a news reporter said on a giant screen. Tomura groaned as he looked up at the screen, seeing that smiling blonde bastard. See that, Izuku, the symbol of peace. He spat out. What symbol he is? If he is truly a symbol of peace, he's doing a horrible job. And then, to Tomura's ears, he heard Izuku agree. Yeah, just like all the others. Tomura placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder and smiled. He was very happy that his younger brother shared the same way. Well, we better get the shopping done. Izuku spared one last glance to the screen of the smiling hero. Just as Sensei said, Tomura carried the bag in his hand as Izuku carried the other bag. TCH, seems we have some annoyances. Tomura groaned with mild annoyance. Izuku looked ahead. Thugs, what do we do? He looked up as his big brother, who seemed to hold back an emotion. We use our quirks, Tomura said as if it would solve their problems. Those thugs will not hesitate to hurt you. Hurt us, hurt Sensei, he told the younger boy. So, we fight to survive. No heroes will come save us outcasts. Izuku gulped as a reassuring hand was found on his shoulder. Don't worry. I'll make sure it's okay in the end. Izuku counted the thugs. 3 in total, and all pretty weak as decided by Tomura. Speaking of Tomura, he already started to walk again. Hey kid, the thug, who was holding a knife, dropped to his knees to talk but landed with his face missing. Granted, he still had his skull. Trespassing on our turf and killing our boy, the second shouted. Izuku surprisingly wasn't fazed. He saw the corpses of his parents, after all, but he still felt a little sick. The knife came down at Tomura. His brother in all but blood. He wouldn't allow it. A sea of flames engulfed the second, causing him to drop the knife and fell to the ground. The third immediately turned to him before 2 knives stabbed themselves into the thug's back, as he fell to the ground as Tomura disintegrated the back of his head. How are you holding up, Aizu? He asked as the child was kneeling over, ready to spew up his lunch. Tomura patted his back. Let it all out, he said. Izuku looked at the 3 thugs. They were old and ragged. They were outcasts of society. I'll admit, Aizu, I didn't want you to do this, but I wanted you to be prepared against the real world. They wouldn't have hesitated to kill us, like the night Sensei saved us. Izuku silently nodded, refusing to throw up. I'll be strong, for you, Sensei and Kuro. Tomura helped Izuku up as they headed back to the bar. Sensei watched as both Tomura and Izuku sat at the bar as Kurojiri fixed them up some lunch. They were growing by the day and Izuku had taken the first 2 lives away from another. Originally, he was going to set up a test for Izuku about taking a life. But now he didn't have to. They hated heroes. They strived to take down the symbol of peace. This, he saw as pride filled him. Speaking about the symbol of peace, he was getting closer. Izuku used to be 8 years old, but now he was 9. Tomura was only 3 years older, being 12. They both seemed worried as Sensei had increased and pushed their training to the limits. He was starting to worry them, Kurojiri included. I'll be back, he said to the 2 boys. Where are you going? Tomura asked as Sensei kneeled in front of them. There's something I need to do. They watched as Sensei had disappeared into the darkness of the night. Come now, Kurojiri said. Have faith in Sensei, will you? And so, they followed the mist man. Hey, Kurojiri. Yes, Izuku? He turned his head to the green-haired 9-year-old. Are you worried for Sensei too? I am, Kurojiri answered. It had been days without Sensei, weeks to be specific. Sensei had yet to turn up. Where was he? Where was he? Where was Sensei? Boys, Kurojiri's voice called out as his shadows warped around the 2. Sensei wants to talk with you. Izuku closed his eyes as Kurojiri's quirk covered him. He had the ability to warp, quite a useful ability. He heard Tomura gasp and Izuku followed next as he gasped when he opened his eyes. Sensei's face, the top of Sensei's face, the top of his face from his upper lip up, was now entirely made of scar tissue now. It covered his entire head, the back of his neck too. He had no nose, no ears, no hair, no eyes though. They could make out the outlines of eye sockets if they looked hard enough. He had various tubes sticking out of his neck and jaw to help with his breathing. It was like he was attacked by a monster. Sensei? The cracking voice of Tomura asked as he slowly approached the now handicapped man. Shigaraki, Tomura, he called out slowly, still wounded from his battle. I failed. What happened to you, Sensei? Asked Izuku, with tears threatening to fall. Izuku, what happened? A dry cough forced itself up his throat. All Might happened. Both Tomura and Izuku's eyes widened. All Might. He did this? Yes, he said bluntly. All Might did this to me. Sensei could feel them hugging his legs, or rather Izuku was hugging his leg as Tomura fell to the floor. He could feel the tears from Izuku. All Might. Tomura spat out with such venom. I'll kill him. I'll kill the symbol of peace. I'll kill him. 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 Sensei felt Izuku's grip tighten on his leg. First my parents, now Sensei? His breathing got heavier. I don't want to lose you too, Sensei, he declared. I'll make sure All Might will never hurt you again. I'll help Anais-san kill All Might. Sensei stayed quiet for the longest time. Come here, both of you. They did as they were told as 2 arms wrapped around them. Thank you? That means the world to me, he said. Sensei, you shouldn't move. I'm fine. I'm still alive. I just need some time to rest. The kids gave him a look as let go. If you want to take down the symbol of peace, you need to get stronger. Then we'll get stronger, Tomura declared. Izuku nodded next to Tomura. Heroes had already taken too much from him. He didn't want to lose anymore. Then go and get stronger. And then, Kurojiri warped them away. They were going to get stronger. Stronger to kill All Might. A cold shiver went down All Might's back as the hero stood after defeating his longtime nemesis of his sensei's sensei, and so on. He was the 8th one, and the one who defeated the long-time menace. The evil ruler of Japan that lurked in the shadows for years, yet, he didn't feel anything, especially if that chill was anything to go by. He didn't feel like he defeated his enemy. If anything, there was a chance he could still be out there. No, he had to be. All for one, the hero looked in the direction of their previous battlefield. The hero fell to his knee as he clutched his side. It hurt, it still hurt. It never once stopped hurting. But now when the adrenaline finally stopped kicking, the pain was unbearable. He spat out blood. He needed to get to a hospital and quickly. It seems I was too late, Sensei muttered as he sat in his chair. This quirk is useless now. He had taken a quirk called Super Regeneration, and just as the name implies, allowed whoever had it to regenerate from any injury on the user's body, such as missing limbs at incredible speeds. However, his scar tissue face was unaffected. His wound had already cicatrized. It was a worthless quirk to him now. However, despite it being useless for him, it could be useful to another. When someone has a goal set in front of them, they'll either do 2 things. They'll either work hard to reach the goal, or they will just procrastinate while the goal stays out of reach. For Tomura and Izuku, they fell into the former. They worked hard. A 10-year-old and a 13-year-old worked hard, very hard. They pushed themselves to their limits, and when they broke or passed their limits, they increased the limit they needed to reach. What is their goal? Kill the symbol of peace. Some would call that impossible, but it wasn't. Nothing was truly impossible, especially in a world where a quirk could be anything ranging from a pair of cannons appearing out of your palms to the ability to control the way the wind blows. In this day and age of quirks, nothing was impossible. All you had to do was reach it, and that's what they were doing. While other kids had things like schools and laws to stop them from growing stronger, they didn't. The laws couldn't stop them. School didn't drag them down. They were free to do whatever they wanted. And the best part to reaching their goal? All Might was getting weaker. Yes. All Might, the symbol of false peace, was getting weaker. While he had almost killed Sensei by destroying his face, Sensei had landed a critical injury on the legendary hero. Now all they had to do was manipulate that wound, make the injury worse. However, the main problem was getting to All Might, and of course their current strength. They still had plenty of room to get stronger, but getting All Might in certain locations was a bit more difficult. He was always on the move. They could create an ambush, but that would require getting the hero's attention. And even then, it could only bring other heroes, and depending on how the ambush would start, the hero would be on guard. They needed to catch him off guard, where he has his guard down the most. A hand swatted away a fist as it repeated again, but with different hands. Engaged in hand-to-hand combat were Tomura and his younger brother Izuku. More Aizu. The team commanded as Izuku kept up the assault. Due to being augmented, he got a boost of increased strength and speed. Good. They kept going before they suddenly switched. Now Izuku was blocking and deflecting the attacks. You're doing well, Aizu. Tomura praised mid-spar. However, if it was meant to throw the green-haired child off, it didn't work. They kept trading off randomly of who was attacking and who was defending. Izuku sat on one of the bar stools in the bar with Kurojiri tending to his glasses again. Hey Kuro. Yes, Izuku? The bartender looked at the 10-year-old. Why do you keep cleaning the glass? Clean glasses are very important, as if they are dirty they can affect your health. The misty villain told the youngster. However, some people feel nervous when the bartender is doing nothing. Oh, Izuku looked at the shelf behind the bartender villain. Can I have a drink? Kurojiri looked at him like he said he was crazy. Not those drinks. He told the green-haired child. You're not old enough. But if you really need a drink, Kurojiri pulled out a drink suitable for a minor. You can drink this. Thanks. It's nothing, Izuku. Izuku panted as he lied on the cold wooden floor of the bar. He had just finished a day of training as Kurojiri warped him back to the bar with his quirk. You worked pretty hard today, the older villain noted. But remember, a smart villain is a strong villain. Izuku finished. I know, killing All Might meant that he was a villain. Sure, the hero was still alive, but he had intentions to murder Hiro, thus he was a villain. He could just picture the day All Might's head was severed and mounted on Sensei's wall. Any news? He asked the shadowy man who shook his head. None. At least nothing for us. He answered. What was it? Just some news about villains is all. He replied. Just a slow news day. Izuku returned his attention to the roof. What about Tomura? He's practicing his quirk right now. The villain glanced over at him. What about you? Are you keeping up with your quirks? I am. He defended himself. I think I'm doing pretty well. You were just practicing your newfound physical strength. Keep it a secret? No. Hey, Tomura and I. The green-haired 10-year-old walked over. Yes, Izuku? The teen asked, stopping his disintegration practice. I want you to use your quirk on me. Tomura gave him a long look of disbelief. What? I didn't mean it like that. Just on my chest. Trust me, Tomura still didn't do it until a bit more coaxing, and when he did, he disintegrated a part of Izuku's skin. That's when he regenerated. You regenerated? Yep, Sensei gave me the quirk super regeneration. Izuku said. I want to help you kill All Might. But in order to do that, I need to be on All Might's level. All Might's level. I know I'm nowhere near his level now, but he's also getting weaker, right? So that means in a few years I might be able to be close. Okay. I said okay. Tomura said. Then we'll become the anti-symbol of peace. Also, keep an eye and ear out for anything related to All Might so we can get a drop on him. What about the other heroes? Tomura stopped. He didn't think about the other heroes. Can you acquire information about them? Yeah, sure, there's a lot, but I can acquire information and get stronger. I can feel the day where we avenge Sensei coming ever so closer. I see they're getting closer. Sensei mused at his desk as a monitor sat in the bar. Yes, well, when the person you might see as a father or savior is almost killed, it tends to bring them closer, not only to the person almost killed but also with others who care about that same person. Kurojiri cleaned the bar as he talked. True. The voice of Sensei came through the monitor. I hear Izuku has gained 3 quirks now. That he has. Super regeneration is useless to me now, Sensei said. It's better in the hands of someone that will need it more. So Izuku then? Asked the Shadow Man. Precisely. He has the goal along with Tomura to kill All Might. Also he is practically a Noumu, a sentient one at that. He can hold many quirks without becoming a mindless doll like the others. Do you think they'll be able to do it? I believe that carry the potential to do so. Once we get more information as the years go by, then they would be able to. He carries my brother's quirk, a quirk that passed on to the 8th torchbearer. Kurojiri could hear the odd tone Sensei's voice took on. I plan to snuff that flame out for good. And if it's passed on? The bartender asked, curious for the man's answer. Even better, he said. That way, one for all will gradually lose power that he can use. Kind of like a water gun. You fire when you have water, but once it runs out, that's it. But this one you can't refill. Then you'll go straight for the successor? Yes. The quirk has gotten more powerful over the years. I would also like to take it back. But it's something I'm willing to let go of if needed to. Kurojiri turned to the monitor and asked, how come? It's quite a simple quirk. I just need the stockpiling strength aspect of it, not the ability to be passed on. I see. Kurojiri looked away for a second and back to the monitor. Are you planning on giving Izuku more quirks? I am. Kurojiri didn't need to say another thing as the man behind the screen spoke. As many as he needs to kill All Might, he said. He is a Sentient Noumu after all, and I don't plan on letting this go to waste. Kurojiri turned around to face the bar as he scouted the contents of the bar. A 12-year-old Izuku walked around the city in the dead of night, ready to either test his quirks, or just do whatever really. He had just stopped by his grave as a dry chuckle found its way up his throat. One he didn't bother stopping as he looked at his name. Funny when you're dead how people start listening. He thought as he continued his walk. If he had one thing to describe the people walking about their days, he would call it disgusting. They were quite competent to live out their lives until theirs was under danger. He could remember a few times, no, a lot of times when there were people in danger, and they just stood around and watched. It made his sick, but that was also a thing that heroes did. Force people to watch as they saved the lives of others. Honestly, heroes were truly disgusting. Pain, something that Izuku would have to get used to thanks to his super regeneration. The first time his skin disintegrated from Tomura's quirk, hurt a lot. He still got Tomura to apply his quirk to the mutant-type quirk he had. He was slowly building up some tolerance to it. Ever since he first got the regeneration quirk, he had been getting Tomura to build up his pain tolerance. For 2 years too, the disintegration felt like a small sting now. However, he felt that Tomura had been taking it a bit softly against him when it came to his quirk. Regardless, he increased his tolerance nonetheless. The 12-year-old glanced to the side, out an open window from one of the rooms above. He returned to a book filled with his own handwriting. He had been collecting information on heroes. A great variety of them too. Heroes like Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Eraserhead, and many others. However, despite his efforts, All Might was pretty classified. How was he supposed to get the drop on the symbol of peace if he couldn't get any information on the hero? Guess he'll have to just take the fact he was getting weaker and had a weak spot and get his guard down. Closing the book, he stood up from the bed he called his own and headed out. He grabbed what seemed to be a hooded coat. He had info gathering to do. With the hood pulled over his head, he took notes of what he saw. If All Might had allies or other heroes with him when they attacked, they needed to know how to deal with them. The notes also shared another purpose. He would give them to Sensei. There were plenty of quirks out there, both heroes and the everyday common folk. Just one glance at the civilians and just one of them could have had a quirk that they could have used to be either a hero or a villain. Ah well, more for Sensei. Seems there's a bank robbery. He mused as the villain who just robbed the bank ran. The robber got nowhere fast as he was instantly caught. Who was the hero that caught the crook? It was the firefighter hero Backdraft, and using his hydrokinesis, he made it slippery for the man to run. The villain made no attempt to use his quirk as he was arrested then after. That was pretty lackluster. The soon-to-be teen shifted his focus elsewhere. What about day-to-day citizens? Surely they might have some impressive quirks. He stood up as he pocketed the book away for later. He was going to walk away and head back after a day of scouting, but he stopped as he heard murmurs. Did you hear? Hear what? They said that there have been unresolved murders. No, yes. and the victims have all been. Izuku tuned them out as he thought about the murders. Oh, he knew they were happening. It's just a matter of when it came to light. And it seems the murders have finally come clean. Or so it would have been. It was just a rumor. It had to be that way for all the civilians to sleep soundly. After all, who could sleep when there's a hero killer walking around? Answer Izuku. Other accepted answers: Kurojiri, Tomura, and Sensei. Thanks for playing. However, the rumors were definitely true if the corpse of a hero could say anything about it. It was time to return before one of those nosy heroes decided to give him an escort home. But if ended with a new quirk. No thinking about it now. Izuku headed back to the bar through a more roundabout way. Unknown to him, his encounter with All Might would be growing ever so closer. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination.